about that, perhaps which might be helpful. And the third part, of course, is waiting to hear all your questions. As long as they don't take me down to the, what happens if airport goes into the black hole. This is what was one of the questions. I mean, something like that was asked, right? As long as it's not as serious and has so much in the sky, I'm a brick and mortar guy. So keep it simple, but if I don't know, I'll let you know, okay? There's no questions, no problems at all. You may ask questions as I go along. I may choose to answer it then and there if I think it's a short answer. Otherwise, I will park it and let somebody remind me if I don't come back to that question, okay? Otherwise, if it's a long-winded answer, I would rather skip it and keep it to the end, okay? So without much more ado, let me get going. These, as far as the, does it work now? I need to switch it on, I guess. 1 minute. This is the one. Stick on now. Okay. Okay. As far as the aviation sector, and I belong to the airport sector, I belong to GMR, and that's why. And I was very pleased to see, all the work that you produced. And I had a chance to really interact with you, not just with the models. Fantastic work done. And also some 3 or 4 presentations. They were really top class. And you must all congratulate yourself, on that. Fantastic work done, and keep it up. I will cover the aviation sector in 3 parts. One, to look at the aviation industry itself. And then the middle section is where actually what I'm supposed to speak regarding design and airports, and that is the knowledge front side of things. And then we as GMR within the airport sector, what have we really achieved? And my context will remain Indian, okay? So, talking about the airport sector, I mean, everyone knows a lot of statistics, right? Every time you go to some consultant, you dig down. And nowadays, I don't need to put it up on the screen. You guys can simply download straight away, and then you get a whole dump. We are the 9th biggest, we are the 3rd biggest, in some 10 years time I'll become the 3rd biggest, and so on. And then you'll say Indian GDP is growing at X, and then something else is going to happen, and then suddenly all these predictions, right? You need to take it with a pinch of salt. All predictions, whether you look at the elections, recent elections in UP, somebody said they will lose, Congress will come, then all predictions were beaten, right? Now everybody is very, very knowledgeable. But really the answer is you can't predict. You can only give it, this is the prediction if this, this and this. And the list of this and this happens, right, is very large indeed. And most of the people simply look at the predictions and say it went wrong, but they don't look at all these assumptions that were made, right? And these assumptions are so that you can actually go back in life and say, look, I said so. This is what happened, this did not happen, therefore mine did not come true, and so on. So like that, all these predictions continue. There are a huge number of data, number of airports in the country, what is the tourism effect, what is the impact of airports and tourism on the Indian economy and the GDP and whatnot, right? I mean, typically the airport and tourism industry in Indian economy, it's about 5 to 7%, depending on which report you need, right? You will say that is the kind of contribution from the airport and the tourism industry to the Indian economy. Move on a bit, and this is where I said the 3rd largest by 2020. Somebody else made it in the same presentation. So this is data by CAPA. It is available. They are the Institute, Asia Pacific Airports Institute. So those people, these reports are available there, and they say that look, this is what happens, and business people and leisure travel both are predicted to be equally strong. Okay, at this point in time. Previously, all our growth till close to 2005 or so was simply more to do with business traffic. In fact, nobody went for leisure, and very few except the top. Now, even for leisure, everybody goes by air traffic. That's why you don't see much of a difference. Looking at the the total millions of passengers, how do you measure the airline industry? India altogether, we have a domestic traffic, which is internal, and then you have the foreign traffic, right? So roughly it is 2/3, 1/3 in India, something like 75%, 25%. That's a kind of split up. And depending on which year and which statistics you look at, we're going to cross 200 million passengers per annum. So this is the size of the market. Okay, okay, the size of the demand. So we're closing roughly about 160 odd will be, domestic, and about 60 million will be international. Of all these markets, you will find that if you take the top 5 or 6, you've already got the 80%. The 20-80 rule works everywhere, it doesn't matter, right? You take the top 20% of the airports, they will always be having 80% of the traffic. And it's the same across all industries, right? You take the US market, you'll find exactly the same. The second thing that you will see in this particular graph here is this is the growth rates of the domestic, very stable. And you'll say this is a low base and therefore it was high, but look at the international one, it's going like a yo-yo, right? So slightly more unpredictable, and you can actually see why this fell. Which year was this? 2009, 8 and 9, right? So you can see the impact. So international traffic, as far as we're concerned, right, we are at the vagaries of what else is happening around the world. But you can see in the same year, the domestic traffic, not so much of a dip. It did nevertheless, but not so much of a dip. So we are somewhat insulated. You might be hearing that we are somewhat insulated because we have a tremendous domestic. And that is the bulk of our market anyway, right? So this is something that you should take note of. And these are the kind of, the figures I talked about, 200 odd and another 260 million by this FY17 year end, right? That's what they're looking at. So it gives you a view of the size of the market and why is all this happening. They're simply saying robust demand, you've heard of the demographics, you've heard of everybody traveling. People are taking shorter breaks. Because in the old days we used to travel 2 nights, I remember, from Delhi to my hometown, 2 nights on the train and then the whole day. So if you're traveling for 2 days each way, you would rather stay at least a week there, right? Today you get 2 days holidays. 3 days holidays, you tag along 1 more day extra or a long weekend or something like that, and people are happy to take those small breaks. And with those small breaks, you can't afford traveling. You want to go directly there. So that's why all this robust demand is happening. A lot of investments you'll find, it is both. If the airport industry is growing, the GDP is growing, but vice versa, GDP needs to grow for the airport industry to grow. So it is both ways, one feeds into the other. Right? One can't grow in isolation. So very often you'll find that whenever you make forecasts of this kind, you're always linking it, if nothing else, you will say you will grow at the rate of GDP. It doesn't matter which industry. It's a GDP plus or minus. So you got to look at what is happening. Is it 2% over the GDP or is it 2% below the GDP or at GDP? You won't grow, there are some industries which may grow up to twice the GDP. So you can have a GDP growth of 5%, but the industry growing at 10%. That's possible, but they will have a good correlation. And statistically, when people do forecasting guides, they try to do when they have a correlation formula, and they'll say there's a great correlation between all this data, right? Because they have a tremendous amount of data, they don't know what to do with it. They'll say it doesn't make sense. Yes, sir, there's a great correlation. Okay, fine. So what correlation is good? It is expressed as a ratio. So 0.8, 0.9 or something like that. So if you get to 0.8, 0.9, it's considered great. I mean, anything above half is great because the rest is a toss, right? It's a toss up to half. So that's what, lesser said about the statistics, the better. We'll come back to it in a minute. The policy support, the government support, these have also another, it's like a booster dose, catalyst, right? Every time the government says, I want to connect all my other cities, I want to build 100 more cities, right? Urbanization, that is what he says. Now when you build 100 more cities, these cities want everything, schools, universities, hospitals, education centers, right? Airports, transportation sector. So you will have 100 new airports. And then these cities say that, look, why should I go there if it costs me and I don't have a flight every day? So the airlines actually shouted and said, look, I can't afford to fly, it's not profitable, I'd rather keep flying Delhi-Mumbai. That is the most profitable route. In the whole of the country, Delhi-Mumbai is the most profitable route. So if everybody had their way, they would only fly those 2 places, right? But then they say, look, there is a certain thing and I need to connect, there is a hubbing strategy, etc. I'll come through. That means you collect all the people. This is what happens in Dubai, Middle East, Qatar. There's a great hubbing strategy. That means you connect people from all the places, bring them to one location, and then disperse them away. Okay? This is what is happening in all these Middle Eastern airports. So you have 3 hubs. People ask me, where is India's hub? We are saying it's in the Middle East. And it is true. The largest international traffic from Hyderabad airport is actually the Emirates, not Air India, not Jet. They carry more people from Hyderabad than any other Indian airline internationally. Okay? So that is their strategy, that's what is working. So India's loss is actually Middle East gain. And on the other side, you have Singapore, which is equally good. And to a smaller extent, you have Malaysia, right, and Thailand, Bangkok, as well as Kuala Lumpur. So if we actually shift, what we have to do, like getting the brain drain and now is brain gain or whatever it's called. So now you need to get those people back into the country. But for that to happen, you need an extremely strong airline. What do we have? We have people, we have the demand. Where is the supply? Right? You don't have a strong enough airline that can actually connect you seamlessly to all these places and provide a fantastic level of service. So if you look at the airline industry, you'll find that in the 70s even, right, none of these existed. There was only Gulf Air and Air India. So I worked in the Middle East, I remember. I had 2 choices, that's all. Gulf Air or Air India, nothing else. And Gulf Air was in a fantastic driving seat, okay? And then they lost out because they did not grow. Air India was truly world class. The service was world class. Maharaja class as it used to be called. And then we just simply gave it away. We didn't look after it as Air India. So we need some very strong airline, what we call in our industry as anchor airline, to actually come and sit. And the anchor airline, and then they have to have a hub. So if the anchor airline is there in India, and these are all very simple examples, Singapore, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, they're a single city, single country. Whereas in India, if not only do you need an anchor airline, that anchor airline needs to be at your airport. So when I'm looking at internally our airport, if it's in Hyderabad, Delhi won't get it, right? So this is what is called a base airport. So remember, there's an anchor airline and then you have a base airport. Now, can one of these airlines have more than one base airport? Yes. They can have a base, primary base and a secondary base and so on and so forth. That means it's like a hub and spoke model, right? You have the hub and lots of spokes feeding into it. That's one sort of feeder. Then there's another feeder. So if you look at Amazon, they'll be looking something like this. Their distribution system, if you look at a product cycle and all that and the logistics, that is precisely what happens. How do you distribute, right? So these are the 3 catalysts that actually drive when we have, and the policy support is now saying that never mind, Indian Airlines or Jet, you fly to Kanpur on a daily basis. Don't charge more than 2,500 rupees for a 1-hour air travel. Whatever losses you make, I'll make it up. So that's a policy support that only government can do. Nobody else can do, right? So that's what the government is saying now, and therefore you will see another 40 to 50 regional airports. So this is what is called the regional airport policy. So airlines no longer can say that I'm making a loss, I won't fly. They have to fly. So it's a question of airports being built now in these places. And then slowly, as there is this thing, and the demand, I suppose, has been there and growing the demand. And as long as it's not price sensitive, right? It's a price sensitive market. You keep it at 2,500 rupees, I think people will travel. So that's the intent on the policies. MRO is simply a function of maintenance, repair and overhaul of the aircraft, major rehaul. As the fleet gets older, you'll find that just like your car, right? You have a complete engine overhaul after maybe 100,000 kilometers or 150,000 or something. Otherwise, you have a small service. Exactly the same for aircraft. So as it grows, we have an MRO in Hyderabad and we are able to take care of it. So simply put, there's a growing demand, and if you have a policy support, then you are definitely going to have increased investments. There's no doubt about it. And people are talking about $5 billion, $10 billion, that kind of investment in airports. Okay, I'm not talking about airlines investments at the moment. Airlines invest themselves. For example, somebody like Indigo is saying they will have 100 aircraft in the next year, right? And I'll come to it. What do these aircraft need? Unlike your car, right? You say, I'll park it on the street or something. You don't need to show a garage to buy a car. But if you want to buy an aircraft, you need to show to the government, look, this is the parking space I have at this airport before you are allowed to buy that aircraft. So the limitation will come now on the infrastructure, the parking positions. So that's why all these aircraft, they want to actually keep them flying, right? I mean, typically anywhere from 18 to 20 hours of flying in the air is what you need to achieve. You'll break even at about 12 hours or something like that, but the extra money and your profitability will come in when you do 18 to 20 hours of flying. That means only 4 hours on the ground. And that's across. And in those 4 hours, you need to look after this aircraft and the maintenance. So that's the analysis there. Now, having set the scene here, let me just move on to this airport development. Okay.